Some pretty juicy info about author George Martin and HBO was recently put out into the world through a journalist by the name of James Andrew Miller, who wrote an entire book about the inner workings of the network through interviews he's conducted over the years. The big headline selling point was George Martin would fly to New York to have lunch with Plepler, to beg him to do 10 seasons of 10 episodes because there was enough material for it, and to tell him it would be a more satisfying and more entertaining experience. Plepler referring to the former head at HBO who recently stepped down as CEO. Martin has been open about his vision for an adaptation of his books, benefiting from a longer TV run. But in 2018, when it came time for the final season, he was asked why it was ending. He straight up said, "I don't know. Ask showrunners David Benioff and D.B. Weiss when they come through. We could have gone to 11, 12, 13 seasons, but I guess they wanted a life," he joked. "You know, if you've read my novels, you know there was enough material for more seasons. They made certain cuts, but that's fine. Those certain cuts include zombie Catelyn Stark returning from the dead, all the Stark kids experiencing warging abilities, Aegon Targaryen's alleged son joining in on the Game of Thrones for what he believes to be his rightful inheritance, and pretty much any storyline involving the Martells and Dorne." Martin had his concerns about the path they were taking season 5 onwards when the showrunners stopped following his template. But it's also important to remember this is the exact time he stepped away from helping out with the show to focus on completing the book series. So the showrunners didn't have Martin or the last books to conclude Game of Thrones, which is what made the first 4 seasons to be so universally revered. It's super interesting to hear Martin having meetings for a longer series, while showrunners were speedwriting a mess of a finale that felt like fanfiction. Even after taking an extra year to come up with an appropriate ending, the last 2 seasons were actually shorter than the usual 10-episode format. Season 7 having 7 episodes, and 8th season having only 6, though they were longer runtimes. Something was obviously off in the writing room, whether it was external distractions or writer's block. But I think it's fun to imagine what the 10-season series would look like if handled differently. Let's say the first 4 seasons remain the same. Yes, a lot was cut, even in those early days, but the faster pacing helped keep casual viewers on board. The first season established the major players, magic returning to the world with dragons hatching once again, Ned's entire story arc, ending the season with his shocking death. The second season picking up with the War of the Five Kings to remove the Lannisters from power. All the while, the Stark kids had to adapt to the world being flipped upside down. Season 3, continuing the war with the morally defeated Stannis Baratheon desperately using his nephew's blood for a magical curse on his 3 remaining enemies, which may or may not have had to do with Balon Greyjoy's death, along with Robb's death at the Red Wedding and Joffrey's death at his own wedding. Season 4 centered around Tyrion's trial, since his sister Cersei believed he was responsible for her son's poisoning. Through this plotline, we see Oberyn enter before his short-lived and flashy end. Tyrion escapes Westeros thanks to his brother Jaime to avoid his death sentence, and Arya also sails over to Essos to start a new life as an expert assassin. Daenerys' story has been progressing a little slower in contrast to her fast-paced first season. By this point in the story, she settled in Meereen as the new queen to learn how to rule before heading over to Westeros, occupying herself with freeing all the slaves in the region. This leaves us with 6 whole new seasons to reconstruct. This may not be the most popular opinion, but I think the showrunners called it right by excluding zombie Catelyn, and even Rhaegar's son. Even though Cat was resurrected by Beric Dondarrion just days after her death at the Red Wedding, her story hasn't gone far past revenge on all Freys, Boltons, and Lannisters, with some of the remaining Brotherhood without banners backing her cause. If this teenager truly is Rhaegar's believed to be dead son, Aegon Targaryen VI, that changes the entire story up out of nowhere. He has a sellsword army in the books, attacking the Stormlands, but like Catelyn, their stories are too open-ended as of now. It would just complicate the already hard work ahead of the writers to fit them in with the rest of the intricate story. None of us know how far ahead Martin has planned, but with him taking over a decade to complete his anticipated next installment, it must not have been enough. Season 5's biggest problem was the Dorne plot that went to shit. It could have been taken out of a cheesy soap opera, and would leave us with the same bad taste. Oberyn's daughters deserved better characterization, and his paramour Ellaria has the exact opposite reaction towards the Lannisters in the books as what played out in Game of Thrones, with her personally killing Oberyn's older brother, Prince Doran Martell. A completely out of character move, and then going on to murder the young and innocent Myrcella. After Oberyn's death in a trial by combat against the Mountain, Ellaria wants nothing else but to see all this vengeance end. She looks at her younger child and asks Oberyn's older children what would be gained in this endless cycle. Huge considering how passionate and defiant the Dornish are described. The trainwreck Dornish part of the story in Game of Thrones was put together to make up for removing two of Doran Martell's other children that never made it on the show, who do have some chapters dedicated to them. His eldest, the Princess Aegon Martell, who was expected to marry Viserys Targaryen in a secret marriage betrothal before his death. After that incident, Doran hoped his son, Quentyn, could make his way to Meereen and convince Dany to a marriage alliance. A dangerous plot, since he's still playing nice with the Lannisters. Quentyn's story doesn't go past Meereen because he believes he could tame a dragon with the small amount of Targaryen blood in him, failing miserably in a painful, fiery death. But it showed Doran wasn't a weak ruler, just patient and calculating. Him revealing his years of planning to Aegon was a powerful bit of dialogue between father and daughter due to their strained relationship. All of Aegon's story would have made for some great television, with her wanting to crown Myrcella queen instead of her brother Tommen against their father's wishes. Instead of ending the Sand Snake story in the 5th season with the pointless Jaime Lannister failed rescue, things could have progressed into the 6th season, so things didn't seem so unnecessary. Mance Rayder was never really killed in the books, only a fake body double using Melisandre's glamour magic. He was sent to Winterfell to help make the Boltons' lives more miserable. More Mance screen time is always welcome. With just these couple additions, those missing 3 episodes in the 7th season could have been filled. But we're aiming for 10 seasons. We can dig even deeper in the story. Season 5 did have some very good high moments, to the writer's credit. No reason to overly shit on them. Hardhome, with Jon Snow encountering the full blunt of the Night King's army, was executed perfectly. Miguel Sapochnik, who handles some of the best battle sequences, was behind the directing here, instead of Dan and David. Miguel was also responsible for the masterpiece of an episode in the 6th season, Battle of the Bastards. The only thing hurting this episode was Rickon Stark's stupid end. What was the point of hiding him away for years, for him to pop up and die, without any storyline for such an important character? They could have explored his wilder personality that was rubbing off on his direwolf Shaggy Dog. Shaggy Dog was the only uncontrollable one of the bunch, with his bonded partner being such a young, confused, and neglected child. An entire episode could have been dedicated to finding him. In the books, Asha is keeping him hidden on the dangerous northern island called Skagos, that no one travels to because it could lead to the end of their life. The people here are similar to the Ironborn or Wildlings, in that they constantly attack outsiders and raid their belongings. The Starks had to ban these people from ever sailing again. Rickon and Shaggy Dog would have grown even more violent here. It was Davos that was tasked with finding him. After Stannis died in the show, Davos didn't really have anything left to do, and I remember the showrunners actually planned on having him become Melisandre's love interest. Good thing that never panned out. Davos traversing Skagos, and possibly coming across some of the reported unicorns, would have been such a fun episode. He's in desperate need of some purpose. But for all of this to go down, it would also mean bringing in the Northern Lord Wyman Manderly onto the screen. He was the one who tasked Davos with this near impossible mission only a smuggler could accomplish. He's also one of the only ones fighting for the Starks' freedom and being entertaining all the while by insulting and cooking up some phrase. The Frey pie moment was given to Arya in the show because it was too good to cut out. There was a minor plot hole in this season as a result of rushing things to the finish line. If Jon Snow is resurrected by the Lord of Light, he should not have returned as the exact same character. Beric Dondarrion said it himself when he first appeared in the 2nd season. You lose a part of yourself when you come back. Even Catelyn becomes darker and hyper-focused on her goal of avenging her children. We don't need a whole emo Tobey Maguire moment like in Spider-Man 3, but something that had to be explored if going by your own world's rules for the sake of consistency. All this added story would push everything in the 7th season back. Euron Greyjoy desperately needed more characterization. He's a legitimately scary threat in the books, and should be more than a wacky villain. Let's say he returns towards the end of the 5th season from exile and gains the Ironborn's support in the 6th season. It'd be strange for a power-hungry, world-traveling exile not to be curious about the prospect of marrying a dragon queen. His younger brother, Victarion Greyjoy, can be introduced as his messenger, but also someone who wants him dead. It's an exciting plotline. This storyline also introduces more Red Priests in search of their promised savior. The one Victarion encounters out at sea believes it to be Dany. The Red Priest Mokoro directly serves the High Priest of their religion. There's no reason why we never get to see their leader when the followers are becoming more and more prominent in the world. And he also happens to be a much better interpreter of the visions he sees in the fires, validating their cause. If Cersei blows up Marjorie and the High Sparrow along with everyone inside the Sept during her trial, it would only be realistic to see everyone in King's Landing turn on her. It was weird seeing the city act like nothing happened after such a heinous act on their own faith. This could be explored in the 7th season, while Dany makes her way to Westeros with full control over Drogon. The Starks reunion in Game of Thrones was nice, but the abrupt transition Bran went through from a Stark to the Three-Eyed Raven was awkward. Mira deserved a better conclusion for her character, and we never get to see her father, Howland Reed, in the present timeline, a very important Stark ally in the lore. Making a set for their moving swamp castle is a lot of work for the set design department, but an indoor setting is more than acceptable for the few scenes that were needed. The 7th season of Game of Thrones saw fans beginning to point out more careless plot issues, like the fast travel with Gendry. Daenerys losing Viserion to the Night King should have had a deeper impact to her mental state, if she truly sees them as her children. All just to bring back a white for the Southern Lords to see and believe in the threat beyond the wall. A little tension between Jon and her could have started here, if the writers wanted to go down the Mad Queen path. The last 6 episodes of the show, aka Season 8, had to cram the entire war for Dawn against the White Walkers, and the actual Game of Thrones. Just sounds insane for all these storylines to conclude in 6 episodes. The first 2 episodes of the 8th season had the perfect tone and pacing, but that's because it wasn't handled by Dan and David. Bran was just completely forgotten about during all the conflict, even though he has the powers of a god. Viserion may be under the control of the Night King after its resurrection, but that should have only motivated Bran to try and take back control by entering its mind. Even if he gets pushed out, it's ridiculous this wasn't attempted. Zombie Hodor and Summer had the perfect opportunity for a sad return, but unfortunately, that didn't happen either. With 2 extra seasons to work with, the cold, darkness, and starvation needs to happen like teased. But what's the point of an evil necromancer if no main characters are turning? We had to see someone we care about come back with blue eyes glowing. Jaime Lannister never really did much for how symbolic it was to leave Cersei's side for the first time in his life. A longer redemption arc would be nice. With Dany choosing Jon instead of Euron Greyjoy, Cersei could be his second choice, and that would increase her number of supporters after using Wildfire on the Sept of Baelor. The greatest threat in this world being taken down in a single episode by Arya can also be rewritten to be 2 whole seasons. Dany is an amateur warrior, and Jon just learned how to ride a dragon. We should be seeing what it's like to bond with a deadly and intelligent magical beast, not just hopping on its back. They're deeply connected through blood magic running through Targaryen descendants. But yeah, all of Winterfell should have been overrun, or the Night King could have just flown over this part of the world to expand his army elsewhere, now that he has Viserion. If you want a threat hyped up for 8 years to be credible, they can't just be taken out so easily. There needs to be a serious struggle. Craster, that creep beyond the wall, was able to form some type of relationship with the White Walkers. Now that he's gone, we have no way of knowing how exactly that went down. This could be answered with a jerk-off character like Euron trying to form an alliance with the Night King. The Night King could have benefited with any kind of characterization. Trying to communicate with Euron could be interesting. A main villain with no personality is boring. Season 8 and 9 could be the loss to the White Walkers and trying to save the world before it's too late. There's no reason the White Walkers didn't make it past the north. They should be all the way in Meereen by the time the 9th season begins. Bran's purpose could be locating the Night King, wherever he is, along with his White Walker leaders, because it is shown, after they die, the whites that they brought back to life are no longer animated. Cersei and Euron being a nuisance throughout all of this would align with their characters. Arya and the Hound making their way to King's Landing to finally put Cersei and the Mountain down, with the undead all around them, is something I expected to see, with their goals aligning so perfectly. I do like the whole scene with the Hound telling Arya to let the obsession with her death list go or become like him. The trip from Winterfell and King's Landing in the 8th season happened in a flash. Things could go slower with a nostalgic Arya and the Hound road trip. Remember, there's still Nymera, her old direwolf lurking in the Riverlands, that could help clear some of the whites. I don't think Jaime should have made it out of the war alive, with only his left hand to fight with. Returning to Cersei, reverting all that character progression. Cersei could die alone with her wine. If Viserion, Rhaegal, and Missandei are all gone in a short period of time, I think Dany would shut down for a couple episodes. Then Arya reporting that she didn't hunt down Cersei, maybe that would send her into a craze to burn down the Red Keep. Burning all of King's Landing is just stupid and out of character, however. Innocent lives would be lost if she only sought out Cersei, but it would be believable for someone in distress to do after her child and best friend were taken out. Jon killing Dany and not becoming king is fine. I just wish Littlefinger was still around to participate in the actual Game of Thrones after all the fighting is done with. He would try to wiggle his way into the royalty status. Gendry, being the rightful heir, wouldn't want the role or even successfully convince the other lords to support his cause. Peter Baelish swooping in at the right moment would be gold, explaining how a non-warrior type king at this time of rebuilding is vital, could bring some of the other lords over who don't know how manipulative he has been throughout the years. If Littlefinger actually sat on the Iron Throne, he'd be a memorable king. That's if no one opposed him. And we know Sansa would. I did think Jon returning to the Wall was a fitting end to the tragic hero. But why go beyond the Wall? Why freeze to death over there when there's so many unoccupied castles along the Wall to house the wildlings? We don't need 30 minutes detailing his new role, but a few minutes with the neglected ghost would be a fitting end to the 10 seasons.